Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.
Welcome to the Paranormal News Insider for Tuesday, July 17th, 2018, and this is officially episode number 360. Wow, 360. You might not have ever heard of the show if you're listening to the Paranormal King Radio Network. This is my first time on this network, but obviously I've been around a little while. This is your host, Dr. Brian D. Parsons, and this is the Paranormal News Insider, coming to you every Tuesday night live. And this week I got a lot of stuff, so I'm going to cut through some of the riffraff and we're going to get right at it. So tonight we're going to be talking about an anniversary for one of the most mysterious monsters of all time. We're also going to be talking about a new show on searching for cryptids, and it's not Bigfoot. And is there a coincidence between the 4th of July and UFOs? And we're also going to be talking about Canada has reported more UFOs than the U.S. last year. Well, that's per capita. We'll explain that. And MUFON, sighting statistics for the month of June. And is there a fraud in ghost research? Gasp. And what do you get when you take 1 part mountain lion, 1 part psychic, and you bake that for 6 hours? Well, you're going to find out tonight. And yes, the Paranormal News Insider is the latest show to join the Paranormal King Radio Network. I'm excited. I've taken a couple of months off and just kind of relaxing and getting back in the groove. I had to get back behind the mic. I miss it. So if you're new to the show, I mean, this is my 360th show, but if you haven't caught the show before, hey, I get it. There's a lot of shows out there, a lot of great shows that I listen to, and a lot of shows I don't have time to listen to. But if you've never heard the show, you don't know who I am, well, this show started way back in 2008. Yeah, 2008. So I've been doing this almost 10 years. And it started out actually as a monthly pre-recorded segment. Did that for about 2 years. And then we went weekly in late 2010. And I was a part of a show called The Grand Dark Conspiracy with host Dan Bouts. And around early 2016, Dan decided to hang up the mic. And I was left without a home and decided I wanted to continue to do this. So I did a live 1-hour show back in late 2016. And I've been doing that ever since. And this is my second network doing so on my own. Training wheels are off. And if you listen to these news segments, and yes, I'm not just going to repeat the news to you. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm going to really dig into these stories. Some stories you may know, they're very viral, but I'm going to cut through some of the stuff and really bring you the inside information. That's why it's called the Paranormal News Insider. And bring you, from my expertise, my knowledge, my time in these various fields, kind of my interpretation of what's going on or the reality of what's going on. Not just going to guess. I'm not going to give you my opinion. I'm going to give you the information that's available. Let it speak for itself. That is the key. And at times I may come across a little skeptical. I get that. I get that a lot. But I do try to maintain a balance. And if you think about it, it's very, very easy to be skeptical. I mean, to dismiss whatever, however, whenever is very, very easy. People do it all the time. Well, that's not real. That's not real. But it's also, on the other hand, it's very easy to believe in anything and everything. We can believe all kinds of stories. We can believe all kinds of pictures and photographs and videos and whatnot and take them for what the people say they are. But it's very difficult to stand there in the middle, stand there in the middle of the intersection and kind of look at these from both angles, both views. What is really going on? And the key is, again, let the evidence speak, not your opinions. And that's what this show is about. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I started out as a ghost researcher back in 1996. I ran a paranormal investigation group for 15 years called the Ohio Paranormal Investigation Network. Since then, I've worked with a lot of other organizations, MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, Sasquatch Research Initiative, the Center for Fortean Zoology, Pennsylvania Cryptozoology Society, Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, Paranexus Anomalous Research Association, Cleveland Ufology Project, and I could probably go on for another 57 minutes, but we've got news to do. I am a public speaker. I have published 6 books to date on everything paranormal. Basically, first 4 were ghosts. The 5th one was on cryptozoology, which is the search for missing or hidden animals, including Bigfoot. And the latest book is on UFO research and investigation. And that's the short bio. And you could read more if you go to paranormalking.com. I got my own page on there. That's pretty cool. And you can also go to paranewsinsider.com. Now that's the official home for the Paranormal News Insider. It's got all kinds of information, paranormal conferences, conventions. Also has a link to the latest news that's going on in the paranormal, contact information for me, and all sorts of other stuff, links and all kinds of fun information. Now, last but not least, yes, I am a doctor. I have a PhD in metaphysical humanistic science, and I know there's a lot of people that don't like that stuff. They say, oh, you just got a degree from a rumor mill. Well, I might have the same reaction when I hear people say that stuff, but I was the same way until I actually worked for a degree and got a degree. I had to work for it. I didn't just pay for it. I had to take tests. I had to study. It took me 4 years. So yes, it's a legitimate degree. And if you're interested, if you want to challenge me on that, tell me how easy it is. You can go to metaphysicsinstitute.org and you can sign up and work towards your degree as well. So that's my challenge for you. And I mentioned my latest book, Handbook for the Amateur UFO Investigator, came out last year, right in time for the Kecksburg UFO Festival. That was my goal. And last year I was a speaker at that event. This year I'm not going to be speaking. I'm going to be a vendor there, which is fine. I'm cool with being one of the crowd. It's going to be a good show, though. If you're anywhere near Western Pennsylvania, or you can get there on July 27th through the 29th, Kecksburg UFO Festival, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Stan Gordon has been putting on this event for quite a while. He's an awesome presenter, awesome researcher. He's helped people like me and a lot of other people throughout the years become better researchers, better investigators, sharing his information, helping out. So I really love listening to Stan speak. Great guy, great investigator. You're also going to have Bob Gaddy, who was a reporter for the Greensburg Tribune Review back in 1965. He was on the scene back on December 9th, 1965, when this strange thing crashed in Kecksburg, which is still in debate. They're still debating. Was this a meteor? Was this a crashed satellite? Was this something from Russia? Was this something from the United States? Nobody knows. It's still debated. It's basically it's our big crash site. They have that old thing Roswell over there on the West Coast. We have Kecksburg here on the East Coast. Also speaking at that event, Ed Kellerman, paranormal investigator and author, and also Seth Breedlove, award-winning filmmaker, the director of Small Town Monsters production company, and 2017's Cryptozoologist of the Year, voted by Lauren Coleman. He's going to be showing his film Invasion on Chestnut Ridge, which is all about the Kecksburg incident. And last but not least, Aaron Dunbar. He's going to be talking. He's a local author from Kittening and has produced a new movie. It's a family movie about Bigfoot. It's called A Wish for Giants. He has also published a book, which is a very good book. I have that. He's going to be also showing that movie at the conference. I'm showing up just for that, because I haven't seen it yet. It's going to be good. And more information about the Kecksburg UFO Festival can be found at Kecksburg VFD. So this is the Volunteer Fire Department website, kecksburgvfd.com. And you can find out more about this event. It's crazy. I've never seen anything like it. It's a festival. There's parades, parade of fire trucks from all over Western Pennsylvania. There's fireworks. There's rides. There's fair food. Go for the fair food. There's all kinds of people walking around with tinfoil hats. It's a great time. You don't want to miss this event. I've got all kinds of other events that I'll be speaking at. I'm not going to bother going through all that right now. tonight, but I have a huge list of stuff coming up over the course of the rest of this year and even next year. I got a couple of events that I'm going to be speaking at. Most of the stuff this year is cryptid stuff, but I've been involved in all three fields. The ghost field, which I mentioned, I started out in. I've worked in the UFO field off and on for probably almost 20 years now. And the cryptid field is near and dear to me because I love the outdoors. I love kayaking. I love backpacking and hiking. And I just like finding animals, whether they're deer or anything else out there. So, I mean, gosh, why not look for those elusive animals at the same time? So I love it. And speaking of cryptozoology, it's a nice little segue into our news. Why not? Let's jump into news. That's what we came here for, I hope. The cryptid news. And one of the biggest stories of the last 10 years, at least in my eyes, is in the midst of its 10-year anniversary. Now, it all started back on July 12, 2008, when Jenna Hewitt took a photograph of a small decomposing animal on a beach in Montauk, New York, while hanging out with some friends. The East Hampton Independent published a story with a photograph on July 23rd, 2008, and then the story went viral when it was picked up by Gawker, which that got shut down in 2016. Thanks, Hulk Hogan, but that's a whole other show. Now, was this an alien? That's what a lot of people thought this thing was. It looked mysterious, looked crazy. Was it a turtle without a shell? That's what a lot of people thought too. And the biggest speculation was it an experiment gone awry from the Plum Island Animal Disease Center? And it was even rumored to be a marketing campaign by Monster Energy Drinks. That was according to an article on danspapers.com, which is where I got this information. But no, it was none of the above. It was actually the Montauk Monster. And this was a term coined by cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman shortly after the story went viral. And boy, did this story go viral. The story went on even after that initial photograph. It didn't die down. It kept picking up little bits and pieces. The story kept getting into the mainstream media. This was all over the place, folks. This was on CNN, Fox News. It was in every newspaper across America. And the story continued with the not just the initial photograph, but with the story that the body was mysteriously hidden. It was buried somewhere. Nobody knew where it was at. But in the end, a man named Jeff Corwin, who may sound familiar to you, an animal expert, and a lot of other animal experts determined that the creature was more than likely a dead and bloated raccoon. But again, it was one of the biggest paranormal stories of 2008 and was one that definitely helped launch this show, the Paranormal News Insider, that September, as I was a guest on the show called Grand Dark Conspiracy. It was the first guest ever, which is nerve-wracking. If you're ever the first guest on a show starting out, you really want that show to succeed. So I kind of hung out. I helped out Dan with that show and appeared a few months later, and we kind of changed the direction. A lot of stuff was on ghosts at the time, so we talked cryptozoology. This was one of the stories we talked about, but by then the attention had shifted away from this story to probably the most viral story of the year, which became known as the Georgia Bigfoot hoax. And we're not going to talk about that one. I'll pass the article about this Montauk Monster along during the week. What I do is I'll do the show on Tuesday, then throughout the week between now and next Tuesday, I'll release all of these links to you, little bits at a time. I don't like putting out 15 links in one night. I think that's a little bit inundating. So I like to sprinkle them like salt and pepper here and there for you guys to enjoy, and try to get them out. Try to get them out before the weekend so you can digest all this stuff. And a lot of stuff is new. It's fresh. It's coming down. Some of these stories I'm going to talk about tonight, they might evolve. So they might change. So I like to get that stuff out there as quickly as possible. And again, I do that through Facebook and Twitter, so you can find the Paranormal News Insider. You'll just look up Para News Insider. You got to shorten stuff. But social media, it's a must. We got to be on there. And my Facebook is tied into Twitter. So anything that's on Facebook, boom, you're going to have right there on Twitter right after that. Because, I don't know, people like different types of social media. I don't mind either one. But I like Twitter for more up to the second material, up to the minute stuff. Facebook, I don't know, what is there to say about Facebook? But this link for this story, it's really interesting because it was actually written by somebody who had their hands on the story, on the photograph, but their editor would not allow them to write the story. Wow. So I thought that was really interesting, and you don't really get to talk about an anniversary thing, but since I'm coming out fresh on a new network, and don't call it a comeback because I've been here for years, almost 10 years, I figured I'd share something that goes back to when I started this journey on this show. And speaking of shows, I'm pretty good on the segues tonight. A story that hit the news on Saturday centered on one of the latest adventurers to look for cryptids in the wild and show it off on TV. A guy named Forrest Galante. Not sure if you've heard of this guy. He's pretty cool. Actually kind of like him. Forrest has a degree in marine and wildlife biology and sports an interesting background from being raised in Africa to being on the television show Naked and Afraid, which, yeah, I've kind of watched a little bit, but not for that stuff, just for where they're at, not for what they look like. And he was on the show not only, it was only being naked, I guess, is the right way to put it. He was not afraid at all. It's actually one of the few people that didn't cave into anything, and he actually didn't want to leave. It was a lot of fun to him because he's weird that way. He's an outdoors person. Now, Forrest was in the news because of his latest episode of a television show called Extinct or Alive. And this was released over the weekend. And the subject of this particular episode was on the Tasmanian tiger, also known as the thylacine. Now, this is episode 6 so far of the series. And I've spent the last couple of days kind of watching some of the previous episodes. My favorite so far is on the Florida Black Panther, which is misleading because it's not actually on the Florida Black Panther. But it's a great episode because I've had the opportunity to trounce around down there in the Florida Everglades, and it's, oh my gosh, it's if anything strange could exist, it's got to still be out there somewhere. And if you have a cable provider, you can go to animalplanet.com and you can sign in and watch all these episodes. Gosh, I sound like I work for these people. But you can watch these past episodes, and to some of you, this may sound familiar. You may have heard of this show, and that was me too. When I saw this, I was like, wait a minute, this is new information. But I know this is an old show, so I had to look it up. Internet Movie Database always comes in handy. And if you think it sounds familiar, yes, you're right. There was actually a show called Extinct or Alive, Tasmanian Tiger, that was released back in 2016, starring Galante. However, this latest episode, like I mentioned, is an update to the Tassie story, and I've actually been covering that here on the Paranormal News Insider. And Galante teamed up with James Cook University, which put on, they had numerous camera traps up in a variety of areas where sightings have been documented many times over the years, going back, I think the oldest one was about 30 some odd years. I don't know if I would have wasted my time on that one, but they did anyway. The show is actually on again tonight, Tuesday, July 17th at 10 p.m. Eastern on the Animal Planet. But again, like they say on TV, be sure to check your local listings. And remember, you can still stream these past episodes as well. It's kind of confusing after that because the show is supposed to be on Sunday nights, but I checked the listings just a little bit ago, and it said next Sunday is a repeat of the first episode. And they say July 29th is episode 5 called The Dodo of the North, which has my attention. But episode 5 in the listings is about the Javan tiger. So I'm not sure what's going on. So just like you, just like me, you're going to have to wait and watch and find out. And you might wonder, yeah, I'm talking about all this stuff about ghosts, about cryptids, and all this other stuff. But do I still go out there? Yeah, I still go out there. I still look for cryptids. I still look for, I still do UFO searches on my own. I still take cases of everything. Ghosts is kind of another matter. I don't really take ghost cases anymore, but I do go out with different people and do independent research on the field of ghosts. I just think the field is just so inundated with so many investigators. And unfortunately, the culture of belief in ghosts has changed so much that the clients believe stuff that isn't really part of ghosts. And it's really hard to train them away from that. And I created my own methodology called the E4 method that goes against how paranormal investigation is done and should be done. It's way different, but alas, it did not catch on because it goes against what people expect. But I'm still involved in all three fields, and I'm crazy because I go out in the woods by myself. I'm one of those people. I just went kayaking in Pennsylvania for a couple of days, a couple weeks ago. Spent a lot of time trouncing through the woods and familiar trails, looking for a sign of. Honestly, I'm a big fan of mountain lions, so that's what I was looking for. Always hopeful to find that, or even a bobcat in the wild would really get me excited. But you never know what's out there. A lot of stories of Bigfoot out there in the Allegheny National Forest. So that's where I was at. And at night, if you've ever been out there, it's perfect stargazing. And was very fortunate to have a couple of clear nights where I could view the Milky Way. I could count satellites that went by and verify what they were. So yeah, I'm out there. I'm doing this stuff. I'm not just a guy behind a microphone, some old guy that's just telling you what is real and what's not real. I'm out there. I'm experiencing this stuff, so I can speak to it, I guess. So that's your cryptid news. We're going to move to UFO news, and a lot of UFO news. We get a lot of cryptid news. I get a decent amount of UFO news. And then I do ghost news, and usually don't get a whole lot of ghost stuff other than people burning stuff down or trespassing. That's usually about 90% of the stories. And then I do a segment called In Other News, where I do stuff that just doesn't fit or stuff that's kind of a combination thereof. But you'll get used to it. It's a pretty good format. It's a pretty simple thing to listen to, as long as I don't put you to sleep. But I throw in some jokes in there, so you got to pay attention, because if you don't get the jokes, I'm not going to repeat them. So anyway, UFO news. And I did a short episode last week just to kind of get people aware that the show was coming back and that I'm going to a new network and I'm still alive. And just wanted people to hear that I'm still doing this stuff. So one story that I actually didn't do last week in my shortened, I guess you could call it a special episode, was that many UFO sightings have popped up around Independence Day earlier in July. And this is something that I talk about probably every single year. I try to avoid it, but it's unavoidable because it's everywhere. Now, one area in particular, and this is like deja vu all over again for me, seemed to heat up in sightings. And for some sharp-eyed observers, including myself, I've realized this as soon as I saw the story. I was like, they got to be talking about this state. They realized that this is a yearly trend. And yes, it is a yearly trend. I couldn't tell you when it started, but there's videos going back for years on a variety of websites. So what gives? What gives behind these sightings? Well, it's over the skies of Denver, Colorado. And if you look up July 4th, Denver, Colorado UFO sightings, there's probably 50 videos that's going to pop up for you if you know where to look. And these are, they're not fireworks. You can tell. I mean, you can tell a firework from anything else, from something strange in the sky. And so these aren't fireworks. I'm not saying that that's what they were, but they're strange lights in the sky. And they're not completely unidentifiable either, because with a little bit of homework, a little bit of research, and a little bit of figuring out what direction the camera person's in, you can figure it out. They happen to be skydivers. Yeah, skydivers. And this happens quite a bit. And an incredibly common event for their display, which what they do is they attach flares to their feet. And these from a distance look like just illumination. It looks like a light. It doesn't look like a flare. You get about a mile away, it just looks like an orange light hanging in the sky. And it moves around. And sometimes it disappears because, again, it's on a foot. So if the body is at a particular angle or the parachute goes in between the flare and the observer, you're not going to see it. So it causes some strange things. And I've been able to actually see this from a distance, kind of by accident once and kind of on purpose another time, because I wanted to set myself into a distance to see what this would look like from a distance. I've actually seen them drop from overhead. It looks a little bit different. You can pretty much tell what's going on. Granted, too, they're announcing it, yelling and screaming into a microphone, and everyone's necks are arched to the sky. But again, yeah, dozens of videos proclaimed to be genuine UFO sightings from the Denver area. and it's become kind of a joke. Well, the videos surrounding these dives, they've been, like I said, number of years. And again, it doesn't have to be July 4th because it's not just fireworks. We can go back to Friday, October 28th, 2012. A video showing mysterious lights near Cincinnati became a viral sensation. So I didn't mention this, but I live in Northeast Ohio. I know you can feel sorry for me. Close to Cleveland, Ohio, between Cleveland and Akron, Northeast Ohio. So I'm kind of close to what they call the Sasquatch Triangle. We're one of the top 5 or top 6 states, depending upon who you listen to, Bigfoot sightings, plenty of UFO sightings in the area as well. And what state doesn't have a lot of haunting stories or crybaby bridges or anything else like that, right? So Cincinnati, 2012, I took notice. But it didn't take long for those in the area, and they figured it out. They came to the aid of the story. They explained that these were skydivers performing at a high school football game about a mile away from where the person was shooting the video. Very common, happens quite a bit. July 27, 2015, the U.S. Army's Golden Knights made a night jump over Milwaukee, Wisconsin during a German fest, which created a number of UFO videos and a little bit of panic on social media as well. Well, that happens. Anytime a story breaks, there's generally a little bit of panic. People make assumptions. They jump to conclusions. Yes, they do. Believe it or not. And this event did that same thing. And the Golden Knights, man, they're used to this. I actually follow them on Twitter. I've communicated with the team a couple of times about some of this stuff, and they laugh it off. It's kind of their unofficial promotion when these UFO stories hit, and then there's the explanation a couple of days later. Oh, it was the Golden Knights. They get free publicity. I mean, there's no such thing as bad publicity in that. They're not trying to go out and become UFOs. People just make the assumption. June of this year, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Golden Knights were once again the subject of multiple UFO videos stemming from a nighttime jump. They're used to this, folks. They expect it. They know it's going to happen. Surprised they don't put out a PR thing. They should. But again, it's kind of cool. It's free publicity for them. It's just amazing to me, though, how many times this comes up. These videos come out, and you should know. You should be able to tell from this, or at least do a little research. I guess that's just me. I like to figure out what's going on and something like that. I do my research in the video. I try to figure out what we're looking at, where we're looking at, when this actually happened, if the timestamp is correct, and go from there. There's a lot of ways you can check stuff like that. Depends on what we're seeing in the video, of course, and if you can get a hold of files and things like that. But yeah, I like to get to the answer and figure out what's really going on here. And if you're operating a UFO website that's claiming that these are all UFOs, I think I'd want to do a little bit of homework first. But unfortunately, a lot of them end up in the lap of these YouTube UFO investigation websites. They're doing it for the money, and I get that. Kind of don't respect it, but I understand it. I get it. We're all doing this for their own thing. Gotcha. And UFOs continues in the news. The annual Canadian UFO survey was released by Ufology Research of Manitoba recently. And this survey made the headlines with their own headline that Canadians spotted 3 UFOs per day last year. Now that sounds amazing. 3 UFOs a day. That's amazing. The total number of sightings was 1,101. And they say that it's kind of, I don't know if it's misleading or not, but they say that it's individual people. So I don't know if it's, they know that nobody repeated anything. These are separate people, or these are different people, and some of these are the same sightings. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this stuff. I've been researching UFO sightings for a long time, and sometimes they twist numbers around. Not saying that Ufology Research of Manitoba is doing that. I mainly follow the MUFON statistics, and they can kind of play tricks on you. Now, yeah, it does sound like a lot. 3 UFOs per day. But it's kind of a play on numbers, and you see this a lot on commercials, advertisements, magazines, studies, scientific studies. They kind of do this stuff on. They kind of play with these numbers, and it's kind of perspective. So if I told you that 60% of people will contract some sort of weird disease, that sounds a bit concerning, but not a huge thing. It's just over half, right? Doesn't sound that concerning. But if I told you that 3 out of 5 people will contract it, well, that sounds pretty serious. I mean, 3 out of 5, that's almost everybody. But in reality, 3 out of 5, that's still the same percentage, 60%. It's just how you word it. This is how you put it. And again, advertisers use this perception of numbers against us all the time. I don't think they meant to mislead it. I think that's just the way the numbers came out, which is true. It's 3 a day over the course of a year. If your year is 365 days, which here on Earth, it's a little over that, but it's pretty close. We'll give it to you. We'll give it to you. Yeah, 3 sightings a day. That sounds serious. Now, what's interesting is that Canada has an estimated population of 36.95 million people. That's a lot. Breaking down 1,101 to a per capita, so per 100,000, shows that not only were there 3 reports a day, but that there were 3 reports per 100,000 people. That's actually pretty significant when you consider MUFON. I did this. This is all my numbers. MUFON for 2017, there were 5,480 total sightings for the United States that year. Now that breaks down to a mediocre 1.72 per capita for the year for the United States. So, you know, I kind of laughed at first. It was like 1,101 for the entire year. That's really nothing. But then looking at the numbers, how many millions of people, and looking at how many millions of people for the United States, doing the math, it's actually a little bit more significant than the United States. So it's actually, you know, I kind of thought it was going to be, I was going to kind of tear the story apart. But once I did the math, I realized it's actually pretty good. It's not large. It's not huge. It's not significant. 3 out of 100,000 people over the course of a year. But it's still interesting. And again, it's bigger than what the United States encountered in 2017. So less than 2 people per 100,000 people reported a UFO in the United States last year. So again, like I led off the show, I would have to put the headline out there of more UFOs per capita seen in Canada versus the U.S. last year. That sounds shocking. More UFOs per capita seen in Canada versus the U.S. But the kind of the down part of this whole thing, yeah, it was revealed within the article that only about 10 cases really showed any signs of being anything truly unidentifiable. But then again, if you look at MUFON's sightings, they don't really scrutinize their statistics either. They don't really break that stuff down. And speaking of MUFON sighting statistics, we're going to cover those. Now, last week I covered for May, which is weird. Okay, so I covered May's in June, and now it's July, so I'm going to cover, well, no, I covered May and July, and now I'm going to cover, well, you'll get it. We're going to cover the month of June. And you'll be all caught up with all the MUFON sighting statistics. In case you didn't hear the show, in the month of May, MUFON documented 678 worldwide sightings, with 446 taking place in the United States. The month of June saw a big drop with only 548 sightings, with a 364 in the United States, which is weird. You wouldn't expect summertime to be a drop in UFO sightings, but there was. I don't know why, but there was. This is almost a copy of February, where there were about 548 worldwide sightings and 362 U.S. sightings, and close to the month of April as well. They had 546 worldwide sightings and 363 U.S. sightings. After the 364 U.S. sightings for June, the United Kingdom was next with 45. Canada finished close with 43. Brazil was next with 12. Big drop off there. France turned in 10. Australia had 9. and India had 5. 35 other countries turned in reports, with 20 of them only turning in 1 report. And interestingly, among those countries was Antarctica. You wonder why. Well, why is that significant? Well, Antarctica, they only turned in 1 report. That's pretty insignificant. But the interesting thing about that is an overwhelming majority of those people that are down there in Antarctica are scientists. So to me, that's interesting stuff, and I pay attention to that. And it's pretty rare that you get an Antarctica sighting, but we do. And before I get into the U.S. state stuff, I guess I'm a little rusty on this stuff. I just want to let you know that you're tuned in to the Paranormal King Radio Network at paranormalking.com, and you're listening to the Paranormal News Insider with your host, Dr. Brian D. Parsons. And yes, we're talking MUFON sighting statistics. And a question in the chat room is, do I trust MUFON? Would I trust them to care for my child? Well, wait, I don't have any children, so I guess that would be a no. Depends on what you mean about trust. Now, do I trust their case management system? Well, I can talk about that. The case management system for MUFON, the way these reports are put into the system, they're just put in when they're collected. So a June 30th case might not be for the month of June. It might actually be for June of 2015, or it could be from May, or it could be a completely different time. And some of these, yes, they're hoaxes. They're not real. Some of them are misidentification. Some of them could be flares of people, skydivers. Some of them could be other misidentification, such as a satellite, an iridium flare, which is a bright shining thing you'll see in the sky. Late evening after the sun is set, you'll see a bright flash in the sky. Some people see those and they think, oh my gosh, it's a UFO. Well, yeah, it's a UFO because you can't identify it. But if you understand what you're seeing, you can identify it. So the sighting statistics for MUFON, yeah, I do talk about them every month and break things down per state, per capita, all these things. And I do probably more work on this stuff than MUFON does. No offense. But they just put out a monthly thing with the stats and they go, here you go. But for me, I think it's interesting to look at the per capita because it gives you a better breakdown of what you're looking at. Now, MUFON used to do the per capita. They don't do it anymore because it is pretty scientifically insignificant. But I think it does give you a nice look at what you're looking at, the stats. I mean, I can't speak for, I know plenty of people that work for MUFON. I'm still a MUFON member. So, I can't really bash the thing. And they have their own internal problems currently. But the stats are the stats. And it's just stuff that's put in the report system. People do look at this stuff. It's not just submit and it's blindly put in there. Stuff is looked at. There are some stuff that hits the cutting room floor. But they try to investigate everything, but not everything that's identifiable is pulled out of that. So it is what it is. And got a couple of other questions, but I'm going to finish this story real quick here. The distribution of the 364 United States sightings that I mentioned finds California in first place with 41 sightings. And it should be. Why should it be? Well, California is number 1 in state population for the United States. So it should be number 1. Because you have the most population, you should have the most sightings. That's just statistics. Now, Texas followed with 28. Pretty big drop off. New York had 20. Arizona and Pennsylvania had 19 each. Illinois had 18. Florida had 15. Oregon had 14. Washington and Colorado turned in 13 each. Michigan had 12. North Carolina and New Jersey had 11 each. Wisconsin, Missouri, and Ohio turned in 10 reports each. And we're looking at Tennessee and Massachusetts. They both had 9 each. And it kind of drifts from there. There are 32 other states, including the District of Columbia, that turned in 7 or less reports, with 10 only turning in 1 report. And sad to say that the District of Columbia, which turned in 2 reports, sad to say that neither one of those was actually on the White House lawn. We always wait for that one, but unfortunately it's not happened yet. And I'm sure you'd have heard about it long before hearing about it on this show, hopefully. But nope, it's not happened, not materialized as of yet. And like I said, I like to break down these things per capita. I'm weird that way. I like numbers. The numbers tell a little bit of the truth. We can think what we want about these numbers. And like I mentioned, California was number 1. But how does that stack up against the average? How does that stack up against all of these other states? So looking at June for 2018, the United States itself turned in a 0.114 per capita. So that's taking the total number of sightings for the month, dividing that out by the U.S. population, multiplying that by 100,000, and there's your number. It's a fraction. It's 0.114. So I guess 1/10 of a person. So 11%. So I don't know if that's somebody's arm above the elbow. I know it's gross to think that way, but it's less than 1 person of 100,000. So it gives you kind of a metric to look at here. So California, number 1 in state population, 41 sightings, beat out Texas, which followed them with, they only had 28. So that's huge. But if you look at California's per capita, 0.104. So a little bit below the U.S. average. Texas, number 2, they had 28 sightings again. Only a 0.1. Only a 0.1. So not much, actually a little bit worse than California there. Arizona, number 14 in state population. They turned in 19 reports. They had a per capita of 0.274. So that's pretty good. That's over double the U.S. average. Pennsylvania, number 6 in state population. They turned in a 0.148 with 19 sightings. Washington, the state of Washington, number 13 in state population, 0.178 with 13 sightings. So above average. Thank you guys out there on the West Coast. The state of Oregon, just south there of Washington, number 27 in state population, 0.342. So it's pretty good. It's probably the highest. That's the highest I have here. 14 sightings, 0.342. So not even. That's basically a third of 1 person per 100,000. So 1 out of every 300,000, give or take. Colorado is number 21 in state population. It turned in a 0.235 with 13 sightings. Also, as you see here, when you have a state that's higher or lower in population, even with the same amount of sightings or similar, you notice there's a lot of deviation in this per capita. And that's why I do that, because we can kind of look and see who's higher or who's lower or what's going on. The state of Iowa, they had 30, or they're number 30 in state population. They had 7 sightings, 0.223. Yeah, so almost double of the average. And interestingly, you look at Washington, D.C., and their population, 681,170. So that would put them, if Washington, D.C. was a state, would be basically between number 48, Alaska, and number 49, Vermont. Now, they had 2 sightings. It actually gives them a per capita of 0.294. That's actually pretty high. It's pretty good. Generally, I've only seen 1 in Washington, D.C., so I'm not sure what was behind those particular individual sightings, but it's weird to see 2 from Washington, D.C. And last but not least, Alaska, 48th state in state population, 48th state all around, 0.27 with 2 sightings. And my grand prize winner this week, or I should say this month, we don't do this monthly, I'm going to go with Oregon, however you want to pronounce it. I like Oregon. I think it's kind of cool. Number 27th state population, 14 sightings with a .342. Pretty significant against all these other ones, but still not significant statistically. I just like to have fun with it. To talk about these numbers, I think it's interesting just to keep track of this stuff. Man, it's a metric, and it's just like the Canadian metric. It's pretty interesting to see that. And one other thing I do with these sighting statistics, I don't know why I do it because I'm always wrong anymore, it seems like, but I do a prediction. And yes, Dita, I see you in the chat room. Dita, a longtime listener. She holds me accountable for this, making sure that I do these predictions. She remembers. She writes these things down. She'll post them on her websites. She'll put it on social media. She'll remind me if I'm wrong. And then it's funny because I'm either really close or I'm really far away with this stuff. So my prediction for the month of July, and I said it last week, so I haven't changed it. I'm going to go with 589 total sightings and 377 for the United States. Whew, I sure hope I'm right. But if I'm wrong, Dita will let me know. And yeah, big thanks for everybody in the chat room there. I love seeing people in the chat room, and I try to acknowledge. I try to watch what's going on. I try to answer questions. I'm kind of bad at that because I'm the Lone Ranger here. I'm doing a show on my own, so it's kind of hard to watch that. But I'm going to be trying to watch that a little bit more here on this network and kind of interact with people a little bit more. And there was a question that I wanted to answer. I got to scroll back here. Question was, do I believe, and there it goes, do I believe there's a connection between Bigfoot and UFOs? That's not really up to me. I mean, there's plenty of information. You ask a guy named Stan Gordon, 1970s, there was a huge Bigfoot and UFO flap going on at the same time in Pennsylvania. I can't deny that. There were witnesses. There were people seeing Bigfoot, witnesses seeing UFOs. It's been documented time and time again. I don't think every time you see that there is a definitive connection here. I think sometimes people get a little wrapped up in what they're seeing, and they get a little carried away, and they tend to look for things that to connect to other things. But in the case of Pennsylvania, I think hands down that's one of the best examples. I mean, 1970s, yes, it was Bigfoot whatever the word I'm looking for. It was just everywhere. Bigfoot was huge in the 1970s. My gosh, he was on the $6 Million Man, all this other stuff. He was very popular. So Bigfoot was on the brain for a lot of people. But this was a huge thing that was going on there, and it's really kind of hard to deny. And there's been a lot of individual encounters throughout the years of these things. So I don't know. I think there might be something to it on a regional basis, but I think overall, I don't know. I'm not going to I did listen to Denise Pridmore's show last night. I was listening in. Great show. But I'm not one for interdimensional stuff. I think that's I'm not sure about that. I think it's a possibility. Put it on the list. I'm not going to say it's not possible, but I'm not going to put it at number one. I think there's a possibility, but I think there's a lot of other stuff we have to consider. We have to rule out first. So it's on the list. Now, we're going to jump into ghost news real quick. And this is kind of a sad story in a way. I don't like talking about this stuff, but you know what? It brings it up on itself. And that's about fraud. I mean, is there fraud and drama in the ghost hunting and ghost research field? I don't know. Well, sure there is. Sure there is. There's plenty of fraud and a lot of drama. I'd say probably 2-to-1 drama over fraud. But fraud is there, unfortunately. And we got to call it out. And it's in the news. So I'm not picking on anybody. I'm not going after anybody personally. This is just something that has to be reported. It's in the news. We have to. Haunted Theories at hauntedtheories.com. Great website, great information, a great guy behind that. And there's a great book behind that great guy, behind that great website. And check it out. So hauntedtheories.com brought my attention to this story via Facebook, the crossroads of information. And yeah, it was actually recognizable. As soon as I started to read the headline from the story, I kind of knew what was going to happen. and thought this was just a rehash of something that I'd already read. But wow, it was a new layer of doubt painted on top of an old layer of doubt. So back in 2014, a guy named Steve Huff from Huff Paranormal released a series of EVPs that he purportedly got during a session attempting to contact the recently deceased Robin Williams. Many people were outraged. I know I wasn't happy. I thought that was in bad taste. He just passed away just a couple of weeks prior to this thing, and a lot of people just felt like he did it for attention, and he kind of did. And he did it again not soon after that, this time with well-known paranormal couple Mark and Debbie Constantino, which probably well aware. They were involved in a murder-suicide. I was very sad. It shocked the entire paranormal community. They were outraged. People were outraged that he did this. He did the same thing, trying to attempt these two. And really, actually, that's when it started. It began to build a rift. There was two camps that were formed. One that was supporting Huff and Huff Paranormal, and one that obviously wanted this guy ousted for what he was doing. But Huff, he continued his practices, going on after other celebrities, Hugh Hefner, Tom Petty, and others. And in August of last year, I remember covering the story that Huff he declared he was leaving the paranormal. He's done. He claimed that he was having demonic attacks, and he was done. He wasn't doing this anymore. But it wasn't that much longer that he jumped back into the seat, and controversy seat, and used his popularity to continue to sell ITC devices. And that's really what I have a problem with. I was using his popularity to sell things to people. ITC, if you don't know, which I'm sure you do, you guys are a very knowledgeable crowd out there. ITC stands for Instrumental Transcommunication. It's basically the method of using technology to get audio or video evidence of ghosts or spirits through a variety of different methods and means. And a lot of people, obviously, are familiar with the term EVP. Back when I started out, you had to explain what that meant to everybody. Now it's just casual word usage. Everybody knows what that means. Electronic voice phenomena, where a voice of a purported ghost or spirit is captured on audio. And it could be with analog or digital, which I'm sure pretty much everyone has gone to digital recording nowadays, or even during a video. So you can get audio from a video, if that makes sense, because you get a video when it has audio in it. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, while many claim that EVP and ITC is exactly the same thing, or essentially the same thing, EVP is essentially channeling voices, where ITC can be, again, a variety of types of contact through different means. ITC generally focuses on audio and video, and it seems like it's just focused on audio anymore. I don't see anybody doing too much video work anymore, unfortunately. And therefore, EVP is essentially just the audio form coming from ITC. It's a lot of little acronyms and abbreviations and information. But the latest news comes from itcvoices.org. And Tim Woolworth, who put up a post, he kind of discusses his personal views on Steve Huff from dealing with him personally. And he shows some pretty interesting evidence that Huff has faked some of his own ITC interactions. Gasp, right? The article is titled "Fraud Has No Place in ITC" and was published on Friday the 13th. And while it might be seen as controversial to call out another researcher for fraud, again, this isn't the first time this type of evidence has been brought to the forefront by other researchers about this particular individual. The evidence this time comes from a YouTube video created by Amanda Grace, who uncovers the fact that Huff used sound bites as part of his ITC sessions. Now, Huff had attempted to communicate with deceased rap star Lil Peep, who sadly I've never heard of. I know I'm out of the loop. I'm an old guy. I don't listen to this stuff. I don't know what's going on anymore. And the Beatles still around? I don't know what's going on anymore with this newfangled hip hop and rap stuff. No, I'm kidding. I'm not that old. Now Lil Peep, not Lil Peep. He died of a drug overdose in November of 2017. And Huff did a session, basically said it was by request from one of his fans, followers, whatever you want to call them. And he posted it on YouTube back on July 4th of this year. In the video by Grace, it's pretty obvious. She does a really good job here of breaking down this evidence and showing actually where these words came from. Came from an interview with the singer, a prior interview. So these words were basically taken off of this interview and put into this ITC session. Not a good thing to do. Not a good thing to do. I'm going to be honest here. I've never really been a big fan of a lot of these devices, especially those that randomly sweep through radio signals. I mean, really, these devices, they're producing snippets of sound really quickly and pieces of sound. So it's going to fool you into hearing things essentially that you want to hear, or maybe that provide the context in which you're in at that time. And it's essentially pareidolia. I'm sure you've heard pareidolia, usually used in the visual context. We see something like you stare at a wall, or you stare at a knot of wood and you see a face. That's essentially the same thing here, but instead of visual, it's audible. But same thing, we're tricking our minds into putting together random pieces of information that sound like it's something significant. But with intentionally deceiving others, trying to sell products, I don't like that. That's just not right. That's fraud. I mean, legally, that's the legal definition of fraud. Misrepresenting information in order to sell a product, that's fraud. It's a shame, that some people in the paranormal have to do this. They want to do this, or they need to be believed so much that they're willing to put their name on the line and willing to lie to people. Like, how do you do that? To me, that's your integrity as a human, as an individual, not just as an ITC salesman or as a paranormal researcher. You're a human being. Why would you do that to yourself? I don't know. And it is a black eye for the paranormal. It is a black eye for ghost research and ITC research that has struggled throughout the years to be looked at as legitimate, to actually get their work looked at by scientists and things like this. It doesn't help. It does not help. And, there's a lot of serious researchers that are in this, and they're not happy about this kind of stuff. And he's not the only one that does this. There's a lot of other people. And it's good that we call these people out, because we have to. We have to clean up the field. We have to take ownership of our field. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to call out people. When we figure it out, we find that information about deception. Unfortunately, you made us do it. We didn't want to do it. You forced our hand. And there again, no field is immune to fraud. I mean, the field of science, it's no better. There's just as much fraud in science as there is in paranormal research. Maybe not, but there still is fraud all the time. That's why science is a process and not an event, not a video on YouTube. It's a process, and it must be looked at by other researchers, other investigators to back it up. And we need more of that in paranormal research. And you think I'm leaving you with that? Not yet. I got one more story, and I got to talk about this one this week. I'll make it quick. I promise. This is from Other News, and this is one of those lovely stories. I love this kind of stuff. Wacky stories, crazy, zany stuff. This takes on a few different dimensions. That's why I parked it in the Other News section. A lot of times I do talk about exoplanets and life on other planets, but not really in the UFO context, because to me, that search for extraterrestrial life is separate from unidentified flying objects, in my opinion. So that's why I kind of keep that in Other News. I do talk about zany world stuff, the end of the world, which comes up probably about once every 3 weeks or so. Cover that stuff in this section as well, and just anything that just doesn't fit into ghosts, UFOs, and cryptozoology, which there's a lot of crazy, zany stuff, and a lot of trending stuff I like to talk about as well. This is crazy. This is crazy. And I've already mentioned this, and those who know me No, I have kind of a certain affection for large cats, specifically mountain lions. So I follow mountain lion, cougar stories very closely. Of course, I don't really do a Google News search for cougars because you end up with a lot of other stories that don't relate to that subject matter, if you know what I'm saying. And of course, I started out my paranormal journey with ghosts. So of course, I'm interested in ghosts and related phenomena. But how in the world could you ever combine ghosts and mountain lions into the same story? Well, it's taken about 10 years, but I finally found a story that does just that. And it comes from Lauren Taylor of Ashland, Oregon, however you want to say it. I don't think either one's wrong. The West Coast, love it. She got the initial scare of a lifetime when a mountain lion wandered into her home. I know that would, as much as I love these cats, I'm actually a dog person, but I like big cats. I like big cats, and I cannot lie. They're just awesome. They're dangerous. You have to respect them, but they're just like big cats, big house cats. And sometimes they're misidentified as big, mountain lions are actually misidentified as they're actually big house cats. But we'll cover those stories when they pop up, which you give it a couple of weeks, they'll pop up. But instead of freaking out, which most people would, I know I'd be a little nervous, to be honest, if one just waltzed into my house. She actually calmly took photographs of the lion as it ended up taking a nap behind her couch for over 6 hours. So where do the ghosts come in, you may wonder? So if that's not weird enough, somebody has a mountain lion just wander into the house and you're going to sit there and take pictures. Well, she actually went outside and took pictures through the window, so she's not as crazy as it may sound. But she did take pictures and video of the cat. And this is pretty much coming off of her Facebook page from here on out. Her experience is posted on Facebook. You can go find it yourself. You can read it. It's exciting. Yeah. So you would expect to either hear about a person who thought their life was about to end, which is a lot of people would say that, or someone who peacefully allowed this cat to do its thing and finally leave to where it belongs. But not Lauren. She's somewhere in the middle there, way on the outside in the middle. Now, her account on the Facebook page said this about the incident, and I quote, "Cats are extremely psychic and perceptive of energy, and this lion could have been dangerous in an energy field of fear or anger. In fact, before I consciously elevated the energy field and entrained her to a theta state, a housemate had shouted and slammed the door upon seeing her, and the lion was frightened, agitated, and determined to exit through a closed window. Once energy shifted, she calmed down," unquote. So at this point, Lauren went outside and saw the cat through a window. And then she says, quote, "When I made a noise, she woke up and looked startled. So I consciously raised my frequency, gazed lovingly into her eyes, and communicated using feline speak, eye blinking, to calm her. It was amazing to realize that this worked. I gazed lovingly, then blinked hard, and then she did it back. Then she went back to sleep," unquote. This is real, folks. I'm not making this up. You can't make this stuff up. But what's a homeowner to do once a large lion decides to take a nap in their home? Well, it's time to find some outside help, right? Get some support. So Lauren says, quote, "It was just a couple of hours to dawn, and we needed to prompt her to leave without alarming her, so much that she panicked. I sent telepathic pictures of the routes out of the house via open doors and the route out the backyard, across the creek, through an open field, and back up into the hills. We got guidance that the way to rouse her and get her to leave her safe spot behind the sofa without panicking was through drumming. We called in native ancestor support and started drumming. She roused and knew just what to do, walking out through the open doors, through the yard, across the creek, and through the empty field behind us, exactly as we had shown her," unquote. God, Now, I don't want to sound like I'm making fun of this because, she obviously, if you read this, she believed every word of it. And a lot of people that commented on her Facebook page believed every word of it as well. So I can't take that experience away from her. If that's what she believes, that's what she believes. I can't argue that. But if you go and you read about her, read a lot about what her situation was, it was pretty spot on. She did a good job of explaining stuff. And she said the mountain lion had been drinking from a source of water on her property and wandered in through an open door. Why on earth? I don't care where you live, Oregon, Washington, Ohio. Why are you leaving your doors open? That's a little wacky. Inside the door were large plants, and an area probably looked like a nice spot to hide. It's probably a little darker in the house, right? Even with the doors open. So it probably looked like a nice cave, nice place to hide. So you can't blame a mountain lion for wandering in until it saw the decor and is like, whoa, what is going on here? I'm hiding behind this couch. She's also smart not to panic, thus making the cat panic where it would have been bad. I've seen a lot of these videos and descriptions where people had panicked these mountain lions that have wandered into places. This is not the first time this has happened. The cat panics, and they'll go through a closed window. It doesn't always end very well for the window nor the mountain lion. It can cause a lot of damage to the mountain lion, unfortunately. It could have potentially attacked somebody else or even her. But sending telepathic messages and images and communicating with the mountain lion, I'm going to call you out on that one. I think that's a bit much to claim that it was your psychic ability. Not saying you don't have psychic ability. Go for it. Solve some murders. Find some kidnapped kids. Do your job. Do it. It's what you want to do. Get out there and help people. Claiming it was your psychic ability that led the cat to safety. I'm going to go with the drumming. So if you watch, there's actually a video that she shows and she's drumming. And I'll tell you what, I about got up and walked out of my room too. It was a little annoying, and I'm sure it was disorienting for the cat. The cat was peacefully sleeping, and it looked really cute. If you see the pictures, he's all curled up in a ball. Sure, he was having a nice little slumber. Then you hear this little pounding, weird drumming. The cat did look a little confused when it got up. It actually just followed the path of least resistance. It trotted down it saw another opening, trotted down the hallway, saw another opening, and it just so happened to end up outside in an area where it went straight across the creek and into the hills and into the sunset, wherever this cat was supposed to go, per her imagery. Yeah, but it didn't. Funny, if you watch the video, it didn't exit through a door that was right there next to the couch. It wandered all the way through the house and then finally went outside. You could see it through the background there. All of this, again, took 6 hours to unfold. Now, I know a little bit about psychics, and I know that 6 hours worth of work, that's going to make you pretty tired. That's going to drain you quite a bit, especially channeling elders from wherever you're channeling them from. I'm pretty sure 6 seconds with a laser pointer might have been all she needed. Just saying, it's a cat. Now, a few people commented on her story, and they hoped that the mountain lion would visit her again in the future. Now, her reaction to this was pretty interesting. And I quote, again, quote, "And to those suggesting she'll be back, no. I telepathically told her very emphatically to never enter any human's home or yard again and to stay out of town, or she would likely be killed. And she acknowledged understanding this," unquote. So I don't know. I don't speak cat speak. I don't know how you explain that to a cat. I don't know how you get the acknowledgement. I mean, do they lick the left paw, the right paw? Do they blink? I don't know. I mean, yeah, I've had cats before, and they're getting tired. If you close your eyes, it's kind of like a yawn. You know, yawns are contagious, and scientists can't even figure out why. So if somebody yawns in a room, you can actually get other people to yawn. I think it's the same with blinking with cats. And even dogs have done this to dogs in the past. If you hold your eyes closed, they'll close their eyes too. So it's not hard. It's not hard to do. Maybe she had a lot of plants in her house. Maybe she had a spray bottle. I could have solved that situation in about the same amount of time. 6 seconds. So it's more than likely that Lauren might now have the sense to not leave her doors wide open anymore. I think she's probably learned that lesson, although she's got a lot of Facebook likes and sure a lot of friends now. Now, in the original story that I read, this is their summary that they put it in perspective, very close to pretty much how I feel about it, on pathos.com. And you can now share this link later on in the week. They say, quote, "In any case, this post isn't a call to harass her or invade her thread on Facebook. It's just a perfect example of someone so desperate for confirmation of her supernatural beliefs that she'll offer the craziest story, which she clearly believes, to explain something that has a perfectly natural explanation," unquote. Couldn't put it better myself if I said it myself, which I would have said it myself. But I think that's a nice way to explain the story. It's crazy. It's zany. But that's how she worded it. That's how she put it. And, I thought it was a cool story to begin with, because these don't always end peacefully. Sometimes it causes a lot of damage in the house, or it could injure the cat. And again, doesn't always end peacefully. People call animal control, the police, and the police, they see a mountain lion, their first instinct is to draw and shoot. They don't care. Protect and serve. And kill cats, I guess. But luckily, this ended well. And now we know that this cat will never do this again, because she was told so. So thank you, Lauren, for teaching and training the cats. And on that note, I don't know how to top that story. So I guess this is where we end for the week. But fear not. Like I said, I'll be putting out these links throughout the week, so you'll catch up on these stories. And we'll get back again next week. And you'll hear me next week. And as I always say, well, not always, I've only been saying this for a couple of years, keep your eyes in the skies, your ears in the woods, the hair standing on the back of your neck. Always keep your mind slightly ajar. And above all else, don't stop believing. For the Paranormal News Insider, this is Dr. Brian D. Parsons reporting.